Jade, tell us about our guest.
Yes. So today we're having on one of my good friends, and he's like a brother to me. We may have very well been siblings in a past life. And Adrian, I met you 8 or 9 years ago, I believe. And it's been, well, we were completely different people then. You were mid-30s, I was mid-20s. And it has been an extreme honor to watch you on your journey to awakening the king within. And I've always known you to be someone who cares about others. Always known you as someone who is very vulnerable and intimate in their connection with others. Always known you to be someone who's a truth teller and a truth seeker as a humanitarian, and you have always been really passionate about, economical issues and things like that. So I've always known you to have this huge heart. You've always been all of these things, and you've always made the world a better place, including my world.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll take it.
When I first met you, you didn't really believe in, falling in love or in monogamy, things that are in your life now. And although you were so much a lover, I know that, and this was the same for me, we were very much in our shadow lover when it comes to the archetypes. Mm-hmm. And you were still, though, somewhat trying to answer, just like I was, and we still are, the question of who am I? And even though when I would be around you, I would see you living with such an open heart, as if you could hug the whole room or the whole party all at once, there was still, I think in both of our eyes, I could see in yours, a longing for something more, or maybe a bit of fear or sadness, because there was still this void that we were trying to fill. Fast forward to today, there is a new sense of groundedness and centeredness and calmness. And I know I've told you this before, there's a strong sense of inner knowing and inner peace without the need of constant exterior pleasure. There's this ability to be alone with ourselves as well. But mostly what I see in your eyes is now a man who is solid, who's ruled by love, and who has an unwavering sense of who he is and what he's here for. And I have loved getting to know you over and over again over these years. And I'm so excited for our men's workshop and for our podcast listeners to get to know you as well. So with that, welcome to the show.
I like that love bomb. That was pretty cool to witness over here if you're on video watching this with us. So,
and by the way, we haven't seen each other in a very long time. So this is,
I think, pre-COVID.
This is a great excuse to finally hang out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Magic Hour is bringing everyone together. I like it. That's what we need after COVID for sure. So I want to ask you to kind of take us back into your journey and maybe think back on your life leading up to now. What are the moments that stand out to you, perhaps both good or bad, high and low, that directed you along your journey?
First of all, how many people are in here right now? I just wanted to say hello to all of you. I can't see you, but just want to acknowledge that you're here. Hello.
So awesome that they showed up.
Yeah, of course you would. This is an incredible duo here. So much wisdom coming out of here. There's a lot. I mean, from her introduction, the question, it just feels very broad. I don't really know where to begin. All I know is that at this point in my life, so many things have changed. And I imagine everybody here has gone through a lot of changes. The whole world has. And I'm really, really, really happy that those changes have come about, because I feel like I'm in a much more grounded place. I'm certainly my perspective on the world, my spiritual orientation has expanded to include a longer timeline instead of just self-centered or me-centered or moment-to-moment indulgent centered. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And that journey was very hard, arduous, painful. And I'm just really happy to be in this moment, having had all that experience behind me. And now I get to take what I've learned, what I've manifested, what I've come to embody, and then start to walk along the new path, oriented now to what I think is a higher order of purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Jade mentioned in the bio or the intro she brought up for you was that there was this phase that she kind of witnessed you going through where it was a lot about pleasure seeking and escapism. And I wonder if you can maybe bring to mind any of those instances where you were sat back and were like, what the hell am I doing? Where are we at, Adrian? Where do we want to go? And you actually got a chance to glimpse that reality. Hey, have I just been running from really myself my entire life?
Yeah, certainly was. I think it was born of a nihilism, a godlessness, growing up in New York City without a sense of a higher sort of God, sense of God or collective in me. It was more ego and so intellectual. And so, they say if if God is dead, then we'll create our own. We'll become our own. So in many ways, I had to step into that role. And so for me, my intellect, my ability to outwit, outsmart, or get over on somebody was a survival method, but also a way of grounding myself in some sort of order. And in that, I was, a little bit, a lot of it self-involved, self-centered in my objectives. Jade mentioned that I guess you viewed me as being loving and caring about others. And that's true. But my care for others stopped where my ego began. Because if it was between me and you, if it was a win-win, great. But if it was between me and you, it was always going to be me. So I hadn't learned the ability to sacrifice or to forego my own indulgences for the sake of others. And that really is, I imagine a lot of people here are familiar sort of with the different archetypes, but that's really the Prince sort of immaturity that I was embodying. And now that I've stepped into a more mature stage of my life, I really look to give of myself in service to others to the extent where I will forego my own needs, my own pleasure, my own comfort, and be able to withstand withstand the discomfort enough until I can, take care of myself again. But that really, and it's not that I'm doing it out of some martyrdom. Like, oh, look at me, I'm like giving myself over. It's like, no, I want to do it because I see the value and the benefit of serving the world, serving others, so that as we are reborn over and over, we begin to come into a world that we have created that is better than the one before. So I really do believe that my life's goal is to cultivate, create, build, give, serve a better world that only I can actually create if I give of myself in those ways.
I'm curious because most people listening probably do know you from Entourage. And I've wondered this about a bunch of actors that were really good playing the role. First of all, when I met you, I had not seen Entourage. I had only seen Devil Wears Prada. And I remember when I watched that in the theater, seeing your character and feeling like I knew you already and think like you looked so familiar to me. And I had no idea we'd have a future and probably had a past together. So it's funny, but like take Monica from Friends, like she plays that role so well. And then when you meet her in person, I remember being at her house one time and being like, she's basically Monica in real life. And it made me wonder, did she play the role so well that she then became Monica in real life? Or because she played it for so long, or was she so already Monica that that's what she brought to the character? And that she just, that's basically how the character was based around. So I wonder for Entourage, because it was so much of who you were then as well, somewhat, I'm curious if you became that role in your daily life, or if you just played that role so well and that's what you brought to the character.
It's the age-old question: does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? And I'd say it's both. It's a symbiotic exchange between what we imagine, what we fake till we make, and then what we make affects us as well, and then we become it. I remember, you know, when you're like in 8th grade and you are going into high school, or you're making some big change where you don't know anybody, and suddenly you're like, now I can be who I really want to be, or I can change my identity because I don't have to continue to, represent this authentic self that everybody sees me at, but now I can actually experiment and try, I changed my clothes out. I used to wear, my mom used to dress me, until like 9th grade, so I would wear matching mustard yellow sweater and socks from the Gap. And when I first got into high school, I was like, oh yeah, this is not going to work. So for the first time, I started to experiment with who I would choose to be through dress, through swagger, whatever. And was I really cool? No, I wasn't. I was just trying it on for the first time. But I guarantee you by the end of high school, I was real cool because I just, conditioned myself to be my new self. So we reinvent ourselves all the time. Life is a creative process. We are constantly in a state of becoming anew. So I give myself permission to take ownership of what I create and who I am. And that's part of taking responsibility for who you are and what you do. But, I remember there was a time I was reading, all the beatniks, and had a a fancy for the idea of jazz music, smoking cigarettes, playing chess, and being in like little dive bars. And it was all new for me. It was just an idea from books I'd read. And I was like, well, I want to be that. And so I didn't know how to play chess. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't like jazz. Whiskey was kind of, didn't taste great. But, I went in, I learned chess. I started like smoking cigarettes, and I became that archetype, the smoking, drinking, chess playing jazz dude. And I started to actually enjoy jazz and the complexity. And, oh, that was weird. Like, what was that off note? So all that saying that I have reinvented myself over and over again to embody ideas of myself. Now, these are characters in many ways, right? And so to Entourage, in many ways, like we are asked as actors to portray a character. So we study the character and we imagine what the character is. And then we borrow from parts of ourselves to, feed in, put into that role. But we all have all of it in us. We have all of the roles, all of the personality types, all of masculine, feminine, good guy, bad guy, all of the things. And it's just, can you as an actor allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to be something that you're not authentically? Because I think on some level, at least socially, we have a desire to be authentic, or at least to seem genuine. There's some, I'm sure, evolutionary reasons for that. Trust, you want to, convey trust to other people so that they invite you in and trust you. But if you're always changing and you're kind of shifty and not exactly grounded in an identity, people don't trust you because there's nothing to expect. So there's, on some level, we want to convey that. But as actors, we have to be willing to go into the unknown of who we are, which is also a very uncomfortable and very disconcerting experience. Because who are you? You're like, you could be anything, and you don't even know yourself. And the only way you know if you get validation is if people applaud you, but then you don't know if you really believe them because they could just be saying that. And then also you have to like trust a director to tell you, did I do good? And then if the director's not that great, like, what do you? So it's a disconcerting experience to constantly be foregoing yourself for these aspects of yourself. So yes, I mean, Vince is a part of me. Vince came from a very real aspect of my personality. And then once the character,
I was just interested if you would say that you were kind of also living offset as that character, or that, that you're wearing that mask essentially for a time in your life, or did the other parts of you peek out often?
Well, once the character was established, especially globally, suddenly I was validated in every room I walked into because they liked the character. So am I more likely to try and be authentically me, who no one knows, who's like kind of like weird and awkward and wants to play chess? Or am I going to be the Vince character and then get all the approval of all the rooms of everywhere? So, you're sort of,
you're almost like, you're funneled, you're channeled to stay in that identity in a way.
Right. And then as a celebrity, you get further reward, further dopamine with attention, sex, alcohol, drug, like whatever you want, it's like always there. So the pleasure seeking me, who wanted comfort, wanted mommy, wanted to like be safe, didn't want to have to stand up on my own and do anything hard, wanted to always be comforted and coddled, was like, hell yeah, man, let's go.
That makes total sense. And I think even, for the rest of the world, I think we can relate so much because we are all kind of acting or wearing a mask to some degree or another. And it is because of our conditioning, of course. And then we go out and we get praised for identifying a certain way. So we go, okay, well, that worked. I'm safe in that identity, safe in the meaning of people aren't ousting me. I'm allowed to be part of the tribe if I keep this identity. My parents accept me, my friends accept me here. So I'm going to just stay in this lane. And we never get to break through into the full spectrum humans we really were born to be here to experience through. And I would love to know, how your journey of like what we're calling awakening the king within, but your journey of making that transition. So like your transition from going from where you were wearing that mask and you were really kind of ingrained in that character or that part of you, that part of your psyche, really, right? And began to kind of realize, wait, is there more here? Like something is missing here. Where did that start popping up, bubbling up for you?
Yeah, well, I think that we instinctively, naturally leverage these transition mechanisms, these transition points, like from junior high to high school, for example, move to a new state, change your identity. It's a lot easier when the external world does it for you. It's like everything's so different anyway, you can sort of slip in and try something new. It's doing a lot of you go with the inertia, the momentum of that.
Like with COVID. Yeah, that's
exactly. So that's why, you hit rock bottom, right? So our evolutionary trajectory is always the same. It's like break down, break apart, reconfigure, decompose, then grow new life. So I had a breakdown. I had a crash that I sensed coming. I intuited it over the years. I mean, it happened a lot later than I thought. Like I got a really good run of that other guy, that other character that I was playing. But ultimately it did come, and I just knew that I had to completely change my whole entire worldview, my routines, my reason for being. I had to reorient myself in a direction that was spiritually aligned to something bigger than myself, get out of my ego, get out of my head and into my heart and mostly into my body.
Yeah.
I had to come back to earth, come back into my physical experience, not
that. So that sounds super esoteric for someone who's not, been in this work of somatic therapy and such. Can you kind of describe what that means for you? Like why coming back into our body and grounding ourselves that way is so incredibly important?
Yeah. And I didn't know that that's what I needed. I had a psychic. So my breakdown was a breakup with my ex-girlfriend, who had the perspective on me enough to know that I was headed in the wrong direction. And she wanted more of me. And she said, you're playing small. It's painful to watch. It hurts me and you suck. So she dumped my ass. And I was so deluded. I was so in my own fantasy of myself that I thought she was absolutely out of her mind. Like I was able to rationalize, like, this bitch is crazy. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're gonna give this up? Really? Like, I have it all. Like, I'm Vince. And she was like, exactly. So she dumped me and like gave me enough perspective on myself where I was like, oh, there's got to be something here. If this person that I love, that I thought I'd be with, who I respect, says that about me. So she gave me a list of things to look at. And I was like, okay, honey, like I'll look at it. But it's probably, this seems crazy.
Such a woman thing to do, giving a written list.
So grateful for that. It was so convenient. It was like, here's all the things you got to do. Like, oh shit. So I like went through one by one. And the first thing that I really had to do was basically take out all of the things that were in my routine. I had to change my routine, strip everything away, and just be to really recognize how I was using each of those things, how I was using sex, how I was using alcohol, how I was using business, work, all of the things, fame, stuff, materialism, and strip it away, start from scratch, and then start to assess. And just in doing that, it was like, oh my God, like I had all these feelings, all this agitation. And I just wanted to grab at all these distractions and these indulgences to numb and to escape in all of those things. And so that began my journey of getting out of the distractions and the numbness of the escape and into my feeling self again, which I guess from my assessment, I had been essentially out of my body for 30 years at least, just deciding to seek not feeling.
Escaping and numbing out. This is such a common thing for humans to do, especially, men. We see it a lot in male culture, just because our society tells us men aren't allowed to feel in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And I think, so an intuitive of mine that I see regularly said something about how men truly do wake up when a very powerful woman breaks up with them, or when they have to go without sex for a period of time, because that's when they feel their feelings more. And so that power of a woman to like shake a man awake, and how women can be so conditioned to accept the bare minimum from a man or the worst from a man, and Jordan wasn't willing to do that.
Mm-mm.
She wanted your full expression. She wanted your full self. And I loved watching that dynamic happen, because it also made me feel empowered to accept more as well, and to call a man forward to wake, his evolution and to fully waking up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a codependency collectively between toxic masculinity and women that accept that. That's why where we're at in society is so powerful with Me Too as sort of, the sort of crude expression of hell no more, we want better. And now women who are recognizing that they need to expect more and not indulge because they feel like they can't get any better and they're a little bit scared that they're going to end up, alone their whole life. So they accept bad behavior in men, but that women are saying, no, we want more. And they hold that standard for themselves and the world. And I really do believe women are the oracles. They're the ones who are seeing what the world needs. And then us men are tasked to help build it, but we are taking our cues from women. And if women are allowing us to be, small boys or like immature or uninitiated, we'll stay like that. I mean, I'll cuddle with mommy all day long as I don't have to do any hard work, but it's not until women expect more of us and then we step into that responsibility and create the structure that we need to build that world.
Yeah. Some men though would feel too tested by that or too nagged by that. So I'm curious, I feel also that maybe the men who can't trust their women to be their oracle is because they don't trust their own inner feminine, or they still have a mother wound. So can you speak on that, maybe how that may have been a part of it for you, and how maybe that came folding together, you being able to trust your own feminine and work on your own mother or father wounds that allowed you to let Jordan be your oracle? Because some men don't allow that.
I think, this shit is deep. Right? It is deep. I would say maybe the opposite. It's that I trusted my feminine too much. I didn't trust my masculine. I didn't actually have healthy, strong masculine role models. And by the way, neither did my mom. And by the way, neither does anybody I know. Yeah. For generations, men have been showing up less and less. And
I know your mom showed up as both for you.
She tried. She did. Yes. And so I would say that my mom did not have that healthy dynamic with men. So she compensated the best she could. And then through subconscious means and through conditioning, having been raised by her, I didn't learn to entirely, I didn't grow up. I didn't learn the masculine part of me, which I needed to. And also because my mother was on her own, she was left to her own devices, and her instinct is to just coddle and hold me and like protect me. So despite her best efforts to try and be that disciplinarian masculine energy, I got away with everything anyway. Like, God bless her. I knew how to, through the codependence of a mom and a child, like I knew how to trigger her mother instinct to coddle me and to protect me and to do the thing. She didn't do my laundry, but, do my dirty work at times. And so I think it wasn't that I was in touch with my mother. I was like, I wasn't, birds leave the nest at a certain point, and it's not that I was living at home with my mom, but I was still living at home with my mom. So it's, I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. So I loved that you allowed that. You're still obviously called Jordan in because it was asking for that from you as well. And I love that you recognize that, because I know you have to be on a certain place in your own journey in order to allow your woman to be an oracle. Otherwise it's just constantly resisted and treated as like, oh, the woman's testing you too much. And I feel that women, we can't not test you when we truly love you, because we want the best of you. We want you to rise to your, there's no way that we can just sit and not call you to your best self.
Well, and I think
if we truly love you.
I think that's what's part of stepping into your true fortitude as a man, or this is speaking for myself, obviously, is when a woman tests you, when she pokes you, when she's, making sure that you're up to snuff for her, is your reaction what's the energy of your reaction? Is it defensive? Do you feel nagged? Do you feel like the little boy where you're like, oh, I gotta like listen to the old ball and chain, or, mom, I don't wanna, is it that energy, or is there something else at play? And I recognized that the energy I was coming from for many years was like, I'd roll my eyes and try and get away with something. You know, if there was a rule, I'd try and break it because I was this, rebel, this, immature, little, punk that wanted to get away with everything. And I thought that if I got away with it, no one knew. Like, it's like getting away with having stolen the cookies from the cookie jar. But then at a certain point, you're just like, I had to change my worldview and say, do I want to live my whole life until I die? Just the same old indulgences and pleasure seeking, and then I've left behind what? Or do I want to actually create something of meaning and
really claim your life? Yeah. I mean, instead of letting it just prod you and poke you along and you get away with things and get away with things. Yeah. It doesn't feel integral even when you say those words. Like I can feel it as you say it. And I think that idea of being able to get back in your body and actually start feeling is really, I mean, that's really what you're speaking to there. When you could sit back in, or what I'm hearing from you is when you could sit back in your body and just like go, how is this emotion coming through me whenever my woman is testing me or whenever something hard comes up in life? What's actually happening inside my body? Like, what are the feelings I'm feeling? Is it tightness in my stomach, whatever it is? And how does that come out of me? Is it like a little boy is throwing a tantrum because he's not getting his way? Where is the power that you're flexing actually coming from? Is it a conscious place, or is it a place of, I just want to get my way and I want things to be this way because it's easiest for me?
An inner child or an inner king.
Yeah.
I want to talk too about, so you and I both did a celibacy period at the same time. I did like a straight 9 months. I think you did 2 series of 3 months, if I'm remembering correctly. But I want to talk about what that experience was like for you, and how I remember you telling me in the midst of it that you were actually like feeling orgasms in your heart. Like you were, I don't know if you remember that, or if you remember going through that, but it actually brought you more into your body, those periods of celibacy. So I want to talk about why you intentionally chose to have celibacy when sex was very easy for you to come by. And so that, and then also how it brought you more into your body. I know that you did some work with, I don't know if it would be called a sex healer or an intuitive healer, but
I mean, in many ways, a somatic healer as well. Well, as I mentioned before, I was sort of looking at the role that these different elements played in my life, sex being a huge part of my life, I love it. It's great. And a huge addiction and indulgence. And so the question was, am I addicted to sex? I'm like, well, I really like it and I want it all the time. Is that addiction? Well, that's not the addiction. The addiction is how you use it. Are you using it to shut down, turn off, and numb? Or are you using it to increase sensation and connect more? So yeah, I had to say, I was like, okay, let me take this off the table and see what else is going on. And that's why meditation is so important, because you're turning off the natural inclination to be distracted by thoughts so that you can come to a more pure, mindful, observation of yourself, right? The what's the word?
Perspective.
Different perspective. And then also in the body, like, how can I stop indulging in all these physical escapes to try and see what's happening in my body, what's going on. And so it was fucking challenging. I mean, really hard, because I've been using sex, masturbation I can't sleep. So, go masturbate. And then like the endorphins and then kick in and you're just like numbed out. And so now I had all this chi, all this energy that I had to deal with. It was like in me, it wasn't being released. So I had to contend with that, all that energy and emotion, and my body just wanting to like grasp back into old patterns and
find another way to numb out, maybe.
Yeah. Like any number of ways, going on Instagram or something, and can I continue to just remain present, come back to presence, come back to now, come back to what's going on in my body, feeling all the feels, and endure that, right? And if you're reconditioning yourself, if you're changing patterns, because certain patterns have been etched so strongly over years of just, habits, to change those patterns is hard. And then to write new ones. But it's possible. But first you have to stop with the old patterns, and then now start to use that energy, cultivate all of that chi, and place it into new patterns that reflect your new vision for the world, your new ideology, your new purpose. It was a multi-year process. and painful. And speaking of Alana Mehta was the guide, the coach who helped me sort of structure my celibacy and held me accountable. And she also, really helped me find and connect into some of the childhood trauma that I had, which started my inclination to escape, because being in my body, my feeling body was just too painful. And so I would just find ways to get out of my body, get out of my feeling. And so once she was able to guide me to reconnect with those childhood traumas and feel the pain of that, and then move through that pain now as an adult, it totally reconditioned myself. And I remember we were doing an exercise, and she, an incredible force, incredible magician. She essentially embodied a figure in my childhood who had hurt me. And I mean, it was, talk about role play and talk about performance, talk about make believe. Like this was her specific skill to be able to channel that energy of that figure in my life to make me believe in this adult moment that it was happening to me. And then to trust her enough that I was safe enough to like witness that experience. And then even though like my whole body went numb and I was entirely,
it's like you went back to that exact moment.
The exact moment of trauma. And I had utter fear and I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And then she asked me, because there was, I'm witnessing myself, but I'm also in the experience from the past. And then she asked me on like a third state of awareness, what are you going to do? And then I had that moment of empowerment where I got to make a new choice. And instead of retreating, freezing, escaping, I got to push through that experience, push through the feeling and be present and stand up for myself. And from that point on, I was again in my body. Now I had feelings that were numb for however long. And why that's important is not because I was able to push through that inner trauma, but because now I'm in my body and I have a whole set of feelings and sensations that I get to use to act upon the world, to receive information, and then to make decisions. So a lot of times, we get distracted by the visual, or at least men do, right? I do, or the things that are readily available. And so we're always gathering information and synthesizing it in order to make decisions, to, make sense of the world. But if I'm offline, all down here, there's all this information that I'm leaving on the table. So now being in my body, suddenly my intuition started to come alive again. And I started to be able to sense things in advance. So whenever I'm about to make a decision, a shitty decision that I've been used to making for, all those years before, suddenly my intuition was like, what are you doing? Does that feel right? Are you sure you should do that? And I'd be like, what is this? What is this? Shut up. Yeah. Okay. No, fine. Tell me more. And I was able to then start to make decisions that were beyond just escape, but were for my, better self and for others.
Yeah.
I was able to sense other people when they would come into my sphere, because trauma attracts trauma. So my trauma was always attracting others who had this similar reciprocal trauma. So there's a codependency there. And so when people would come into my sphere, and as a celebrity, there's a lot of people coming in my sphere, instead of just like hovering above it and being like, whatever, I'll just, hope everything goes well. I would sense, I was like, there's something off about this person. There's something that they're seeking in me that is not healthy. And instead of indulging that and indulging their trauma and then contributing more, I was able to step into the appropriate role for that person. It's like, oh, this chick, doesn't want me to flirt with her. She doesn't want me to try and sleep with her. She actually wants me to protect her and love her. And so now I am able to serve her appropriately as an adult man, as a protector, as opposed to the little boy who's just like, yeah, I'll, just indulge all the badness.
Yeah. Thank you for being so open, because I know a lot of men don't talk about their sexual trauma. A lot of men don't actually remember their sexual trauma. And I didn't realize that we had Stefanos on last week and talked about how the number is much higher than it, you would read online.
The number of men that have
had sexual trauma. Yeah, we hear a lot about women's sexual trauma. We don't hear a lot about men's. And I love that you were able to reach that place and like rewire your brain with that trauma and respond kind of like Peter Levine talks about. I think you pronounce it Levine with Waking the Tiger, like the animal shakes it off, you know, and how you probably were in this fight, flight, or freeze up until that moment where you were able to go there again and shake that trauma off. And I know for me, when I relived it, my sexual trauma, it was on ayahuasca at first where it came back up and I had oh wow, this went much further than I realized. And then I revisited it again on MDMA with a trauma expert, and my whole body trembled for so long. And when I revisited it and I saw that I had blacked out the actual rape, when I was able to go back to it, I was able to tell myself, you're safe, we're going to overcome this, and stay in my body. And my sexual pleasure after that, I won't say that I didn't have sexual deep connection prior, but there was always this feeling of not being fully there. And pleasure was harder for me to reach. After going through that sexual healing work, I felt fully in my body, and my orgasms were a lot quicker, a lot stronger. And I was able to, just to simply put it, be more in my body. Was that your experience as well? That when your celibacy was through and you then were intimate with a woman, was it much different?
Well, I mean, it was different in that, you know, I went from being polyamorous to monogamous.
Yeah. Was that part of it too? Because I know during your celibacy, I remember you telling me that you were ready for your queen. But like our talks prior, you know, when I was in my, 8-9 years ago, you always had multiple, you know, partners.
I was enjoying myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
But towards the end of your celibacy, you were like really ready to have your queen. So was that also a part of the celibacy? Was like that shift in you?
Well, I'm still a very open person. I just don't know if the practical function of polyamory is quite appropriate for me. And I don't even know for society at large, especially the way in which people are indulging that idea. Not that it's not possible. I just don't know if I'm ready for it right now. Like as an ideal, yeah, I think, you know, one day, maybe in the future, but I do recognize now that there is an aspect of commitment to myself, to my partner. And ultimately, why do we have partners? To create life, to build a family, to have children, and then create a safe space for those children to come into the world and grow up so that they perchance don't have the same exposure to the traumas that we did, right? So my goal right now is to create that haven, that sanctuary to, you know, have a family. And when you're juggling all of these energies from all these different people with all their traumas and all the various degrees of work or not work that they've done, the variables just increase and it just becomes a little bit more challenging. Not that it's not possible, but more challenging than I really care to embrace, because I have so much work to do outside of the relationship, still with myself. I'm still becoming the man that I want to be. I still have a fuckload of skills I still need to learn, which I failed to do throughout my whole life because I was too busy clubbing or something. I don't know. I just bought land. So I need to learn how to steward the land and, you know, grow food and build the community and all of the skills that I need to learn so that when my children do come into the world, I don't have to play catch up to teach them how to be the man. They see it witnessed in the way I embody myself and how I practice. So I have to build up to have the skill set to be the example for my children so that I don't even have to teach. I can just be.